Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, and welcome to Balls Out Podcast. Another Red Devils roundup, and it seems that finally the saga is over. Over 40 days of negotiations, two bids, and finally it has been agreed. Brian and Mbeumo agrees a deal, or Brentford and Manchester United agree a deal to sign Brian and Mbeumo, and we are going to be talking all about that tonight. We've been on about it for weeks, hoping and praying that the deal gets done so that we actually have something new to talk about. And here we are. We've got it. It's done. The deal is agreed. And as you can see, joined by Mr. Langridge, as always. How are you, mate? You good? Take yourself off mute every week. Are you on mute still? Have you just muted and unmuted yourself in the same? There you go.
Yeah, don't double clip the mute. See,
Double.
I told you backstage. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you say, 40 days. It feels like 40 years to get one deal across the line. There's nothing like being a United fan, but finally we can talk about it.
Finally, we can talk about it. And joined, as always, we are privileged and honoured as best we can to have Coach Kai. Whenever he can make it, we are thrilled to have him here. How you doing, mate?
Good, guys. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
Excited for this Mbeumo news.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are. We have just hit our 60 subscriber mark. So thank you, everyone who has liked and subscribed our shows. We really do appreciate your support. We are growing naturally and slowly, but that's the way we like it. We like people getting involved. Get your comments in. Jump over to Twitter. Follow us on there to keep an eye out for new shows. And if you're interested in joining the podcast team, please do not hesitate to slide into our DMs on Twitter. One of us will get back to you and we'll add you into the podcast group chat. And you can make your appearances and your opinions heard on our channel. So, yeah, the Brian and Mbeumo saga started around 40 days ago. Just a whirlwind of not knowing, and not knowing. But it has been agreed today. 65 million plus add-ons ranging from 70 to 71 million. It sounds like the magic number is 71. On that figure straight away, Mark, before you go into it too much detail, is that a fair price for Mbeumo, or is that too much, or have we been done over here? Because there was a lot of dominoes that had to fall to get to this point, which we'll talk about later. But on that figure in general, 70 million, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been happy to pay 70 to 75 million for him. At the end of the day, he had a better season than someone we paid 62.5. So natural increase. Plus, they didn't want to lose too many of their players too cheaply. I think that was Brentford's biggest fear, and it just shows how they've come on as a club. You know, strong negotiations, and they stuck to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I say, there's a lot of dominoes that had to fall to get to this point. But on Mbeumo as a player, Kai, what should we expect in your mind? You know, he scored. I think he scored 25 goals. 30, was it 25 or 35 between him and Cunha last season? Between the two of them. So, what do you expect from Mbeumo?
To be honest, I'm very excited to get someone who other people fear. That's for me the first thing, because when you fear a wide player, normally running at you, you back up really, really quickly. And I think that's the one thing that we struggle with, because we're always pinned back so far. No one really respects the players enough to feel there's too much danger. So you hardly find a fullback backing into their area. You know, when Salah gets the ball, all of a sudden it's completely, no one defends like they normally defend. Everything goes to shit. They're diving into tackles, and I think that's something which, for example, even Ahmad struggled to do, because I don't think they respect him as much yet. So he almost has to try a lot. And I think just having a fear factor, someone like Mbeumo, which managers are like, oh, listen, this weekend we have a game plan. He has so many tools. He's quick. He can come on the inside. He can finish very well. He takes half chances. And I think just any manager looking at trying to create a game plan for us might also have a little bit more thinking to do, right? I think that's really important. I think that's why, for me, I want more signings more than just having, because I know that, like, United always sign good players, or rather players which just had a good season, right? We don't ever sign a player which had a bad season wherever they came from. It's only when they get to us where almost like they forget their footballing ability and all of that. But I think this time when you have someone like Mbeumo, which, and I think actively, if you have him and then you have Cunha, right, and then you have Ahmad on the side with him, then you actually have some rotation. You have people that play football the sensible way, right? If you see some of Burmo's goals, it's really, I call it, there's so little overthinking. It's, I'm going to score, right? So through ball comes in, I controlled my left and I slotted bottom corner. There's no too much. I get there, then I got to take an extra touch. Those sort of things, his partnership with Wisa. If you want to see what being selfless and being smart and creating Brentford really focus on creating high XG chances, right? Tap-ins, chances which everyone bought into the fact that you should be able to score really easily. Look at how Mbeumo plays as well. Him and Wisa, even if he's through on goal, if you can see there's a tap in, the ball's going across, tap in. Um, he's also just a very strong player. So
Yeah.
just strong, it also means that if you see how he shoots, the way that he creates good enough chances to be able to actually get a good shot off, you think of Garnacho on the other side. How many times has he been bearing down on goal? But you can almost tell when he's not going to score because by the time he gets to the ball, there's sort of a fragility a little bit. He's falling over when he connects. The finish is going right into the keeper's path. But when you look at what Mbeumo sort of brings and the experience, he's actually putting it where he knows he's going to score and making the right decisions in that case. So I think we have a player which has some respect, right? And I think the combination with Cunha as well means there's a lot more command. I like that it's happening at the same time. Instead of it being Cunha this summer and then a few lesser signings, and then next season again you have to do it again. And I think that's what we've been doing a lot of the times. We buy one very, very good player, but we don't buy other players which are on a similar level to them, for them to be a starter, for them not to have a selection headache, straight into the first team, straight into the 11. If you're fit, you're playing, type of a signing. So I really think we've got a good one. And I think his stocks would be higher if he was French, to be fair.
Mm.
His stocks would definitely be higher. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the bold by choice guy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, beautifully said. Absolutely, it says a lot, Mark, for a when we heard about Ineos having this sort of transfer policy. They didn't want to buy absolute superstars. They wanted to keep it within an age bracket. They wanted a sort of Premier League proven mentality and the sort of old school mentality of what Sir Alex always said is buy players that play. That was always his way of thinking. Don't buy players that are sitting on benches. Don't buy players that are injured. Don't buy players that can't even make it in their starting 11s for their country. We're buying Premier League proven talent. Yeah, admittedly they're playing for lesser teams, although admittedly they both teams finished, I believe, above us this year. Maybe Wolves finished just below us, but still, it's a sort of it's a we give Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe a lot of stick, but this transfer policy that they seem to be sticking with is there what they're sticking with.
Um, yeah. Is it by choice or is it by default because of where we're at? That's
Mm.
one thing I'd say. But Man
It's not a
United,
bad default, though, is it? In my opinion.
well, it was. It. So Man United was built on buying the best players from the teams around them in their league. That's what they always have done,
Mm.
up until the last 15, 20 years, I would say. But we started buying more You look at the amount of failures we had, even in our glory years. Sebastian Veron, outside of the Premier League, fails. But then you go to a small club and you sign Jason Park. So, you know, there's always been ups and downs. But Brentford are probably, I would say, the fittest team in the league. So you've got a player who can run for 120 minutes, probably not needing a break. Like you said, they've always got to be available. And a great team doesn't need superstars. That's just a bloody lucky team that can be amazing and have superstars. But hands down, a team will beat individuals, 9 times out of 10. We've all how many times have United fans been crying out for, oh, get him out? All he cares about is his stats, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
I was just trying to get up his stats for his goals because I also know he's an unreal penalty taker, and I just wondered how many of those 20 he scored in the league were pens. Because obviously we have Bruno and no one else is taking them. But Kai hit the nail on the head. He's been brought in for passing that ball across the 6-yard box for a tap-in.
So of the 20 goals in the 24-25 season, 5 of them were penalties. So 15 from open play.
Yeah, so same as Cunha then, because Cunha didn't take any penalties, so I believe. Yeah, so 30 goals plus, Bruno might start firing this season. He warmed up by the end of the season, didn't he? Got him in. You can clearly see what the manager wants from his front players now with bringing this in. This is penetration. As you said, this is running in behind. Not running the channels, but running between the centre-backs and then expose the space for the wing-backs to get into. I literally can't wait. When they said we were signing him, I didn't care if he was a Brentford player or whatever. I've seen him with my own eyes and I know what he can do. And what is he, 25? You got to remember, Salah was a shit Chelsea player. De Bruyne was a shit player. Like sometimes these players come good as they get older, and his career's done, gone like that. Goals wise, assists wise, year on year, he's got better. So at 25, he should just about hit his peak, and we've taken him. What club wouldn't want that?
And you know what's interesting? If you see Cunha and Mbeumo, the positions that they like to take up, right? They are different and somehow sort of work, right? Cunha likes to come centrally so he can burst through the center. And Mbeumo normally likes coming from, the outside to the inside type of a thing. And I think it's so important that we have footballers which understand rotation because that's part of our problem. The fact that we cannot move in the attacking areas because everyone's standing in the same position, right? You normally have Dogu standing in the same position. You have on the other side, if it's Dalo or Mazraoui, they don't move. It's exactly there on the wing back position. And then once you make the pass, then what happens, right? And I think there has to be a little bit more sense in that. And I think that's also what that bringing Mbeumo and Cunha also does in there. The fact that I think natural footballers will tend to make a 1-2 when it matters, will tend to move to the right space. And I mean, the only concern would be looking at the positioning, right? If you have Bruno and you have Cunha and they are always roaming type of players, then what would you have left in the midfield? That's the only question in there. But yeah.
Kai, it's the biggest question. For
Yeah.
me, Bruno gets less game time now. And that's
Should.
ridiculous to say,
Should.
but there's no way he can play in the midfield.
Yeah, but he is going to, right? So, like the one thing we know is he's gonna play in one of the pivot positions, probably.
If there's anything we know, that the only player that we know that's going to be on the starting 11 consistently is
right?
Bruno.
Yeah. So, and I think the way that it maybe probably works out that Bruno is not playing in the pivot positions is again if he's playing, but if maybe Cunha takes the 9 position and then Bruno goes into the 10 next to whoever's playing, probably Mbeumo in there, then would have another midfielder set, in there. So
I think, Kai, you make a very good point. He could go in the 9. We could put someone in the 9 position. I
Yeah,
don't know if we're going to cover it tonight or we'll wait for more solid interest. But if we're now linked with Sesko, he's not. No one's going into 9 position. We're also
fair.
linked with Edison. Edison, what we're going to do? We're scrapping Ugarte, Casemiro because we have to play Bruno. Bruno's going to have less time. It's a fact. If he's not disciplined, he's off the pitch.
Yeah, I
You
mean he'll
can't
get.
wait.
Yeah, I think he probably will get less time, but that's only because there are more competent players, which are also very creative, right? So
Yeah, I think that's
that's I think
That's
the
a
plan
really
is.
important point.
Yeah, I think
Competence.
the plan is I think now to instead of having Bruno, with the law of diminishing returns, get to 15, 20 games and he's tired. I think now the idea is how best can we manage sometimes because you don't need to start a League Cup game against Swansea. There's no need, right? And I think sometimes those types of things, I think that's where it's key to have two good tens and more creative team. So you're right in terms of the fact that Bruno will get less time, but I don't think, like Nathan was saying, that it's going to be substantially that much, especially if it's one game a week, right? That's also the thing. So if it's a smaller squad and it's one game a week, then your captain is also going to say, "I never get injured, ever." So I think and they've already refused 100 mil, right? Like they refused 100 mil from
No, they accepted the 100 mil. Bruno refused to go.
yeah.
uh,
Bruno didn't want to go, but yeah,
They accepted the money for him, which is because of his age, and that's why I
yeah,
don't think he'll be playing as
yeah,
much.
yeah. But I mean, the fact that the club didn't do anything to to be like, all right, you didn't become one of the five, right? Like
mm.
at
No, I
least
think
I think there was from both sides a thing which said, okay, tell us what you want to do. And then Bruno probably is like, all right, what do you guys want? And I think there is a mutual, we would like to have you. But then there's also the feeling of, yo, but it's still 100 mil though. We got to consider
yeah,
it.
we've spoke.
Right? I think it would make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Kai's spot on there. There's two spot on points that you guys have made. One is competency. We've relied so heavily on Bruno in the last 5 years that he had got to points in seasons like Kai said, 15, 20 games in, he's tired. He's not reaching the levels that he has been because of that. And having the opportunity to sub him out, rest him for, like Kai said, random League Cup games or FA Cup games,
Mm.
because we haven't got the European headache this year. Some see that as a disadvantage. Well, I think I've been hammering on the fact that it's a bit of a blessing, apart from PSR and the aurora of being Manchester United in Europe. I get that, but the fixture congestion of not being in Europe is going to help, and it's definitely going to help Bruno in the long run because he's going to be able to be rested. He's going to be able to be put in less compromising positions. The discipline aspect I understand, but I think that was a lot of it was down to he was frustrated with the players around him, and it looks like they're going to be heading in the right direction. These players being signed aren't being signed unless there's a conversation with the club captain. That's always been Manchester United's way, and that's never going to change. Bruno would have not saying he would have given permission or anything like that, but he would have been spoken to about these signings 100%. But yeah, the less reliability on Bruno is definitely going to help us in the long run. And if that means he's being put in less compromising positions on the pitch, having to work his arse off for 20 games plus a season, to be able to be rested for players, i.e. Bruno, Mbeumo or Cunha slotting into these positions to take the slack off of that, I think that's going to be massive.
I think we're gonna. I'm calling it now. Season's not even starts. I think you're going to see a lot less of Bruno. I know he's captain, but the reason I say this, and you just hear me out, we've got. If you see him, he'll be helping out as a number 10. We've just signed 2 number 10s, so of course now he's not first choice number 10. We can agree on that because we don't spend that much money on backups. So false 9 maybe, but if the rumour is right, came straight out after this confirmed deal that United have also been entertaining a Sesko offer. So that's two strikers, 3 strikers if you include Xerxes. Fullbacks, we've probably got plenty on the left, right. We can have Ahmad, Mazrari, Shea Lacey's now training with the first team, so that's that covered. Amal and Mason Mount can cover the 10s as well as Bruno. Casemiro, Ugarte both play right side of the midfield too. So Casemiro would have to play the left side.
I think Casemiro doesn't play.
Bruno would have to play the left side in there. And he runs into the same spaces where the 10 would be, because that's what he's always done. He gets in people's way. And we've got in, 6, 7, 8 centre backs now with the youngsters. And the goalkeeper, well, that's up in the air, but we can only hope Garnacho goes and we get Martinez. So that's what I mean. I don't see Bruno having a solid starting position because he's going to be proven in the 8. Me and Nathan, we spoke about this a long time ago, didn't I? I said 8 suits him, but he won't be able to play Hollywood balls. And his short passing is shit. He gives it away 9 times out of 10 when he tries a 5-10 yard pass because he's never on the half turn. He passes it blindly round corners.
But I think the Hollywood balls have pretty much been played out of football anyway. You know, you don't see the long balls that we used to see with Scholesy. Even like players like KDB, Kevin De Bruyne, would make those Hollywood balls that you would see week in, week out for Manchester City. You just don't see that in football anymore. You know, you look at old like goal of the month and goal of the season awards from 10 years ago. You look at them now and it's shocking. You know, the standard of football, I mean, the playing out from the back has really killed the game in Premier League, but that's a different discussion for a different day. I want to talk about the domino. Well, actually, no. Before I move on to the domino effect, I want to talk about the payment plan that looks like is being slowly unravelled. So the initial transfer fee of 65 million is to be paid in full instalments. It's understood that Mbeumo's contract will run until 2030, with the club holding the option to extend. And obviously, there was around £5 to £6 million in add-ons. The content of those add-ons hasn't really been released yet, but I can imagine that's goal bonuses and international bonuses, etc. And maybe even sell-on clauses, which I wouldn't be surprised if we were able to sell for a profit at that price, but you just never know. Kai, what's your thoughts on that particular, the price itself, 65 million plus 6 million in add-ons? We got Mark's thoughts earlier. What was your thoughts on that fee in general?
Well, to be honest,
Manchester United were very determined not to be bullied into making rash decisions, and we'll talk about, I think, the reason why they made this bid today shortly, but just get your views on the fee.
Look, I mean, firstly, we have to ask what is the true value of these transfers these days, anyways, right? If I can just segue for one little moment, if you look at Ekitike, for example, right? Out of nowhere, and I say out of nowhere because it really is out of nowhere, right? The PR machine has been crazy on him, right? And all of a sudden, he is one of the best strikers that anyone has ever seen, right? 100 million. Where? I tell you what, he's a very good player, but Ekitike is probably probably had almost exactly the same season that Xerxes had. And they seem very similar, which is also the same type of season that Darwin Núñez had, which is also the same type of season which Nicholas Jackson had, right? So look at the value of these strikers, right? And look at how inflated they are because everyone actually now, to be honest, everyone is trying, or rather everyone is banking on Isaac, right? Everyone is banking on this happened with Isaac, therefore the player is going to be extraordinary, right? But all of a sudden, for example, now Nicholas Jackson is out the window, right? So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that for me, the value of these transfers, if it's below, if your club can afford it and it's below 100 million and it's successful, right? Nobody talks about it. It absolutely does not matter. This only matters to the business people. So I treat United as a business case and I love to look at it. And that's why I'm a little more sensible. I'm not angry at anything. I'm like, yeah, of course, if you're going to organize 4 installments for 16 million, you have to absolutely do it, especially if you know the player is going to come and you've got a chance to do it, right? You've got to be brave in the negotiation, because you have unfortunately lost all types of negotiating power over the last few years. You lost all types of bargaining power, right? Our last CEO came out and said Manchester United can do things in the market that no one else can do, right? If you say that and you're not Real Madrid, it means that forever everyone is going to keep on saying, "Oh, you can do things that no one else can do." 70 million, 60 million. Paul Pogba, 80 million. This and this and that. So we lost so much negotiating power up until a point to now where you need a reputation. And for a reputation, you need a few transfer windows. You need people to say, okay, fair enough. Okay, you need, or rather, you need people to act like, you know, how you can imagine how directors of football feel about Daniel Levy, right? Um, Daniel Levy will be at the golf, and he'll be maybe at the sixth, whatever the tee off, whatever hole is or whatever, and the rest of them will be sat over there at the 99, the 10th hole, and they'll be thinking, should we ask Daniel Levy if we can sign Son? And they'll be like, nah, don't even try. And I want us to be a club which people are like, don't even, it's not gonna happen, because they're more like, okay, we understand their stance normally. We know how these people behave as a club, and I think we need to bring some sort of reputation, and that's why it's taking a long time. Fair enough, whatever. But if Brian Mbeumo is 65 million and he scored 20 league goals and he is going to the prime of his career, and Ilanga is 55 million, then I think it's a good deal for me. And like I said, as long as he's successful, we've seen this before. We sign a big player, is not successful, and then he is a flop, whatever. But as long as he's successful, for me, it doesn't matter. As long as the wages are good, as long as this new wage structure they have where you don't put your goalkeeper like De Gea on 375k and then expect that every other player is not going to ask for 300k at least in your club, then I'm fine with it, because I mean, you did a lot of damage with that. That is a lot of damage that people don't talk about. If you offer your goalkeeper the highest wage bill, you're never, ever, ever getting out of it. That's why you have Rashford on a high wage bill, Sancho on a high wage bill, because that's what the club does. So, sorry for rambling, but yes, good deal from all aspects, including a football aspect, and also a mentality aspect, which a lot of us have been crying out for. So, yeah, I mean, installments, easy game. PSR.
Mark, you want to jump on that quickly before I move on?
I think we should do the flip side of it. It's been brought up in the comments. We wasted so much fucking time for paying the money they wanted.
Yeah.
So we don't have a pre-season, and we go and screw ourselves over again because the people who run Man United do not have a clue about football and what it takes to be an athlete. So in Mbeumo, we're lucky. It's probably one, like I said, Brentford, one of the fittest teams. They've now gone from doing the 1K test to doing a 2K test. You know, people just don't understand. Try doing it. It's a killer. But it's
Can I ask a question though, Mark? Can you, as a business person, right? If you're in a negotiation for one of your best players, right, and it's a big club that normally is used to getting their pants pulled down, and if they said, okay, we've only got this much to spend, and they bid, and then you say 70 million, whatever. If you went out and you worked on 3 deals, right, in which the same thing is probably going to happen, you're going to have to try to negotiate some sort of a price, and you try to complete other deals. What do you think will be the outlook on the current deal that you're trying to complete? I'm saying in the context of us as a club, right? Like, what does it look like? As in, does it, if you're spending 50, 40 over there, and then you're going here, and then you're saying, nah, I'm not paying this much for your best player?
I think we keep hanging on to being Manchester United. If a team finishes above you, you don't lowball them because you're shit compared to them. It's simple as that. Doesn't matter what business it is. There's a reason, like with Nike versus Adidas. Their quality has dropped off in Nike, so everyone's changing to Adidas. Their trainers, they're they're not what they used to be when I was younger. They don't last very long. So when you start going back down, you're not who you were. You don't have a say. You know,
Yeah, but the price goes higher, right? Like I'm just saying, like if you went back to Brentford and you just have announced two deals worth 40, 50 million, because we want them to work on other things in public, right? I mean, we're assuming that nothing has been worked on that we don't know. That's the assumption that we're making. So
And there's also an element of, sorry to jump in, but there's also an element of that they've lost their manager, so they had to recruit a new manager. They had to negotiate with Arsenal about the Christian Norgard deal. So it's not like they haven't had other things. Brentford haven't had other things they've had to focus on. So there is probably an element of that. It wasn't just us
yeah, but you need
holding
to
it
take
up.
Brentford out. The fact is, we never offered
But
the
you can't,
money.
yeah, but you can't take Brentford out of the equation when they're part of the equation. You know, the negotiations between the two clubs.
But why is it as soon as Visa was about to go, looks like he's about to go to Newcastle, we stump up the money they asked for, and the deal's done in 48 hours.
Perfect segue, absolutely perfect. So
yeah, but this is the thing, right? Like you're just pointing out exactly what happens in business, and that's what I'm just trying to say. That unfortunately, yes, it looks like all right, cool. The Visa news came out, and then they were forced to do this, right? But I just am trying to say that for a club in the context of what we are, like I think we all really understand how bad we are as a football club anyways, right? And
mm.
to be fair, preseason starts tomorrow, right? And for me, this is already a win because if Mbeumo and Cunha don't have to miss 2 weeks of the season opening because of visa issues, right? Fair enough. So I'm looking at it more of saying the context that we have. I think there's more time. I know we've wasted time, right? But I feel like deals that will be done from now might be more straightforward in that you're not dealing with the best player in the club or something like this. In my own view, I think the deals we'll try to do will now be more sensible deals, deals that we can complete with a little bit more leeway in that. Sometimes in business, negotiations take long. And I'm just trying to say that I know from fans it doesn't make sense, but sometimes it could be incompetence or it could just be there's too many fine details that you need to iron out for yourself, right? And
I'll give you the fine detail, right? You do not sign a player with a buyout clause when you're trying to negotiate for a player who has no buyout clause. Because as soon as you pay the buyout clause, they're expecting that money. Because if that they got a
so what
level,
do
say
you
you
do?
paid that, we pay 62.5 million. Cunha should be our last deal that we do because you've just got to stump up the cash and it's done. And Mbeumo should have been the first player we went for, and then they would have had a harder job saying, "Well, we think he's at this value because you've paid that." So that's bad business. Yeah,
But is it though? That's what I'm saying. Like I'm
yeah,
saying,
it
like
is.
I know that's a perspective, right?
It's not
But I'm
perspective,
not
it's the
saying
facts. If I've got money, if I'm going to buy a car off you and you don't tell me the price, we're going to negotiate. We're going to talk about a price, right? But if I see a car next to it, exactly the same car, I might go, well, I roughly know what the ballpark figure is, so I know where to come in. It's by offering money for any buyout clause. This goes for any team, not Man United. This is football. If you're going to sign 5 players, you do the easiest one last, unless he's already gone, I want to play for Manchester United. Now that used to happen, and Burmo agent said, I only want Man United. No one's handed in a transfer request. No one's handed it and gone on strike. That's a
Well,
player.
he came out. Not he came out, but it was discussed earlier on in the negotiations that if a deal couldn't be done, he would just wait until next summer. He
Yeah,
wasn't desperate to leave, and I
he
don't think
wasn't desperate
Brentford.
to leave. So the cards are still in Brentford's hand. They're not United's. But what I'm saying is, you're right. Say we've got 300 million to spend. You want to get a player for that as little as possible every deal, don't you? Out of that 300, you need to spread it as thinly as you can because there's multiple positions we need to fill. But when they're being linked with Gyökeres, whether that was bullshit or not, again, 70, 80 million for an unproven Premier League player who's only scored like double what Mbeumo did in a shit league. So we know he's not going to score the same amount of goals in the Premier League. I think we all agreed that. We've done a show on it as well. So if we had done Mbeumo first, I think we'd probably get him for a better deal. But United went in and offended Brentford with their valuation.
Yeah, Mark.
That
If
is
you
a
just
fact.
want, if you don't mind just answering Glenn's question, and I'll get Kai to answer it as well afterwards, and then I just want to move on to the domino effect. So yeah, if you just want to, thank
Well,
you for your comments, by the
we
way.
yeah, Glenn, that's a great point because we had the chance to do this deal before he went for 55 million. Yeah. So I would have said Cunha isn't worth 62.5, but that's his buyout clause. I would have said these are all around the £50 million player mark. But because of the movement and business, like you say, once there's a precedent, that they paid that, so I think he's worth this. I think for Mbeumo, if Elanga went for 55, Mbeumo's probably worth 55 as well then, because I think their stats are nigh on identical.
But that's the thing, though. It wouldn't be the same because what Brentford value the player and the outlook and the perception they have of him is very different to that of Forest and Ilanga in this case, right? So Brentford will always tell you he scored 20 league goals, right? 20 Premier League goals. That's what they'll tell you, and they'll tell you that a lot of people were interested and all of that. So even if we started negotiating, I mean, assuming again the context that we're in and we're united and we are not good at negotiating yet, even if we started with the Mbeumo deal, still we could have gone to a stage whereby somebody pays 55 million for Elanga, and then we still have to end up paying 75 million for Mbeumo because of what the club values the player, right? So what I'm just trying to say is there are different perspectives, and that is unfortunately business, that you have to pick maybe the lesser of two evils sometimes. And I tried not to see it more as factual, because sometimes you can find a person who's just having an off day, and it does happen, right? A director of football or whatever who just basically says, "Nah, I'm not doing that today," without any sense, and then tomorrow it's a totally different issue. Or so, and everyone's always trying to get one bit of upper hand over each other, right? So to be honest, I don't know. All I know is at the moment we just need to be happy that we've got two players that we find, but that we wanted
Yes.
to get, and
That's yeah.
right. So of course we can say, okay, fine, maybe the plan took too long, but there's a rollout here. We can see that, okay, they said we wanted this, and this is what we're trying to get, because I think they would have had these conversations before the season ended with some agents as a feeler. Hey, listen, we would like you. Do you think? And then there would have been some conversation. So I think, with that said, I think it's a decent deal, right? We know that we are incompetent in some areas, but they've managed to get some installments in there. So
Well, okay. So let's put it another way, just to sum it up. We signed Cunha, who was the 8th top goal scorer in the Premier League last year with 15 goals for 62.5 million. And
Bargain.
Mbeumo was joint 4th with Chris Woods. Are you paying 70 million for Chris Woods?
Over Rasmus Højlund any day.
Okay. Salah at 29 was obviously top goal scorer. Isaac, Haaland, then it's Chris Woods, and then Mbeumo. And then Visa had 19 goals, 1 goal behind him, right? Ilanga had the 3rd most assists in the Premier League. So Chris Wood's goals came from Ilanga's creations,
Which is what Newcastle are hoping to get for their
okay?
55 million. They're hoping to get
What they
55.
want.
They want Elanga to feed Isaac.
But you also have to remember, and a lot of people forget this, in the market values, they signed him for 55 million, knowing that a percentage goes to Manchester United. So that's where the inflation on his price comes from. That makes him a 40 million pound player. Because I think it's 6 or 8 million that has to be paid to Man United. So then you start going, hang on then. It just depends on what club. Again, it's Man United tax. It's Manchester United. We don't want them to come back because they're only 2 or 3 players away from having a great side. We need to make them pay as high as possible because they're desperate for the players.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. No, absolutely. Yeah, so I just really want to quickly talk about the sort of domino effect that sort of happened, I think, to get to this point. So Monday morning, Newcastle expressed they want to sign at a TK for whatever money they were planning on doing. Monday afternoon / evening, they get word from Liverpool, which I believe was sort of like putting the feelers out. We're stirring the pot, not really going to happen, but we'll ask anyway. Liverpool then approached Newcastle to say, we will pay a British record transfer fee for Alexander Isak. Newcastle shut the door on that, say he's not for sale. Liverpool then go and sign whatever his name is.
Okay.
Thank you. They're going to sign him. That looks like the deal's been done, around 80 to 90 million pounds for him. That meant Newcastle have now put their sights on Johan Visser. And Brentford have said in the past that they don't want to lose Mbeumo and Visser in the same transfer window, as well as their goalkeeper, as well as their captain, and as well as their manager. So they had to sacrifice one of them. And I think that was the catalyst for United going, well, if Newcastle were looking at Visser, we need to get this deal done now before Newcastle get a deal agreed for Visser, and then Brentford go, well, you're not having Mbeumo now because Newcastle have taken our other player.
So,
I think it was just an interesting.
No, you're spot on.
I don't think it's panic. I don't think it's
It
panic because the deal's been in talks for ages. It was
But
just
if we
getting
don't
those.
hurry up and pull our finger out our arse, Liverpool, who have just gone in and gone, here you go, here's 150 million, here's this. They've just gone in and got deals done.
Yeah,
We
but
would have lost
Liverpool.
out. They signed Fisa and then we don't get Mbeumo. We're screwed. And Liverpool would love to screw us over.
Yeah, there is that, but there's also an element of that. And Liverpool have got endless amounts of money because they've had no PSR problems for the last 2 seasons. They've just won the Premier League and they've had countless number of seasons in the Champions League. Whereas we just can't pull out money from our arse at the minute because as much as we're not under the PSR issue at the moment, if we don't get Champions League football next season or the season after, then it's going to become a problem. So I think we can't just throw money at situations like this that Liverpool can. You know, they've just broke the record for Florian Wirtz. They bought Frimpong earlier in the window, Milos Kerkez. They've now got I've been laughing at them on talks for all week. Thank you. Etekite. Yeah, whatever.
Eki. Just remember it's Eki.
What's his first name?
What was it?
Dave. They signed Dave.
What was it? Hugo.
Hugo. Yeah, him. They've just signed him. They've splashed the cash out, so they haven't had a PSR problem because they've not really spent anything. You know, they probably said to Arne Slot in his first transfer window, look, let's just work with what we got and we'll see what we get. Before you know it, they've won the Premier League and they've gone, oh shit, now we've got all this endless riches. We've got no PSR problems, so let's just fucking splash the cash and make sure that we put up a good fucking stead. Because we all thought, and everyone thought, Liverpool would struggle with Arne Slot in his first season. And nobody can come on here and tell me, oh no, I knew he was going to win the Premier League. Bullshit. No one in their right mind thought that Liverpool.
Going to struggle on his second season.
I think he probably will, but that's because he's added more players. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and win the Premier League again. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But there's an element of that Liverpool are now. That's probably more of a panic thing. Is that the fact that they're splashing cash like nothing because they're thinking, shit, we've got all this endless money. Before it becomes a PSR problem, we need to spend it, and hopefully that will then put them in good stead because there's a good chance they'll win the Premier League again with these players.
And that's the point I'm really trying to make is about us dragging our heels, and like it affected us in multiple ways, right? But if they can just walk in and pay for a player, which they've done so far, United they shit the bed and went and got the deal done, right? Man City went out, got all their deals done with their dodgy money and everything else. Liverpool done it. Arsenal done it. You're trying to catch teams up. You can't drag your heels. And sometimes you have to pay over the top because if that's the player you want.
Sorry, I have to disagree with you, I'm afraid. I think there's an element of we can't keep thinking we can catch up to these teams because we're not going to catch up to these teams. We are in such a dire strait when it comes to actual playing quality. We are not fishing in the same pond as these teams.
But we can't get those players out. So the only option we have is to buy players in.
Yeah,
but we're not going to be fishing in the same pond that Liverpool, Chelsea, City, and Arsenal are fishing in.
That's the thing. I mean,
a business, we have. Cunha was wanted by Arsenal. We signed him, and Mbeumo was wanted by other clubs. We've signed him. Gyökeres, we're in the same negotiations. He's still not signed for anyone. You know.
But I think also for Cunha and Mbeumo, you have to realize that whichever one of those teams that would have tried to sign him, he wouldn't have been a sure starter anyways, right? So
yes, Kai, that's the most important thing in football, isn't it? Am I going to start? How many games am I going to play?
Yeah, right. And obviously that would have been part of the discussion which would have been had. But of course, there's also the sentiment, Cunha United fan since growing up, blah, 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 right? So, there's a whole lot that's gone in their deal. But I think we should never lose sight of the fact that like I said, this is more of a rescue mission from Ineos since the
Mm.
day that they walked in, right? So I've seen it in some businesses where there's a takeover or a mini takeover, whatever it is. But then when you get in there, you realize that you've grossly miss how do you say it? You didn't think it would be
There's a
this
lot of
bad.
skeletons in the closet. There's a lot of
Exactly.
things that were
And,
buried.
yeah, exactly. And like you said, buried, right? That like that is so important because when people are showing you around their business, they'll tell you that things are bad, but they're not this bad, right? So I do think that there was an element of, all right, cool, we're gonna go in there, it's gonna be chill. There's just a few minor fixes here, and then as a business, they really realize that, oh, okay, we are actually in the red in most things over here. And also, if you have to look at how those rescue missions normally work, you start cost cutting so very badly in areas which everyone thinks are the worst areas that you should be cost cutting. But
I agree.
unfortunately, this is just what businesses do. They start over there, and they have to ride out the hurt. And I think the behaviors of Ineos have been, for me, very very similar to some takeover behaviors which I've seen, where before you know it, it starts off with, oh, don't worry, everything's gonna be great because there's these new guys, and then it's like, oh shit, wait, these guys actually have to make bad decisions. And
Mm.
unfortunately, I know it doesn't sound great, right? But the club has been run into the ground so much that people actually talk about a Europa League, for example, as being. Can you imagine Manchester United needed that? How much is it? 10 million, plus of course all the Champions League things and all of that. But in what era have United needed that trophy to just stay afloat in terms of
Mm.
progression? We've always been able to say, okay, we're shit, 300 million, boom, right? And it's a pattern, right? You come second, you don't do anything, and then you come fifth or sixth, you're like, oh wait, we got to do everything because we got to get back into the Champions League. And we're now in a situation we can't even do that, right? So that's because I promise you now, there's some players moving there in the transfer window that if this was the era 5 years ago, right, with and we still had some cash and we're still doing sensible deals, there's a lot of players which would have come to us immediately. Guys like Kudus and Morgan Gibbs White. Those are deals which, if you had a good transfer strategy and whatever, you could get done easily just because you're Man United and you can pay the money. But I think for me, what's been very clear in terms of the way that you've seen we've been dragging our heels, as you say, is really because you also have to proceed with caution, unfortunately. And I think I don't know how to say this the best, um, but if we separate the fan and the business, you really understand that these guys are, if you just think about what they're doing now, if you think about what is happening at the Man United offices in trying to keep the club afloat, then you'd be thinking, yeah, okay, fair enough. And I think there's a big element of that. It's not just as easy as Liverpool and City going in and saying, here's 20, here's 40, here's 50, because they have cash flow, right? They've actually got cash flow. We don't have cash flow.
Yeah, but
So,
Kai, then we shouldn't have paid the money. But if we were
no,
going on what you're saying, we shouldn't pay 71 million. We
no,
offered 55, we pay
but it's
55.
not 71, is it? That's what I'm saying, right? So if we have to think about how it's going to be paid out, right? Maybe it's 50%, and then the other 50% is in the four equal parts, or it's four equal parts from the initial fee. Just the fact that the club is in a situation where they say, guys, we absolutely have to pay 16 mil every year. This is what we can do, right? For me, that is for me the idea that the club really is trying to find a way to complete the transfers which they said they would in a certain way. Because remember, something didn't happen. We didn't sell Sancho, we didn't sell Rashford, which were bankers, in my own opinion. If you're an owner, you're kind of saying, all right, I'm putting this in the green zone, right? Rashford, Villa, cool, and Jadon Sancho, Chelsea. And then you get there, and then what happens? They say, nah, we're not doing it. In fact, here's 5 million, keep him, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Ineos wrote that contract.
Sorry?
Ineos wrote the contract for Sancho.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine, right? Whatever they
So
did is fine. But what I'm just trying to say is the idea that the transfer window, before it even could get legs, right? Some of the bankers, which they thought, which would have been the big ones, right? Those are the sales which they were talking about, have not even happened, right? So I think there's a lot of things that happen in business. That's why I'm saying it's crazy. If those two were sold before, we would have been finished with this transfers a long time ago, maybe, right? It's different. It's if you just try and imagine what the guys are doing, trying to complete the deals when you have this balance sheet, right? Then you have to understand that these things might happen, right? They might do. It just might happen because we're not the other clubs, because we've been doing nonsense for 15 years, 20 years, So for me, we got two good players. So until I see that, okay, end of the summer, we don't have what we wanted, or preseason isn't going so well, then I'm like, fair enough, you dragged your heels, it took too long, this and this. But that could be true, but we could also still have a good summer at the same time, I think.
Kai, I 100% agree that we got the players through the door. The point I'm trying to make is that a lot of people don't realise, we spoke about it last week a little bit and in previous weeks. Pre-season is now over. We will not train properly as soon as we land in America. Pre-season's done. So he had to be in those first 2 weeks. That is what Amarin does. It is the hard work. It is the running. It is the tactical. So if we paid that money, he gets in, he's off to a flyer. Now he's got to learn on the go through tactics boards and little soft training
But
because
it's
of the
Mbeumo.
times.
But it's Mbeumo. Like it's like we know this guy now. Like what I'm saying is, it's like we've seen this guy. So we can say, like, we're not talking like of
We've seen
somebody.
Rashford, and you said he was a banker. We
No.
can't
What I'm
sell
saying
him
is,
because any Man United fan said no one will want him because he's a lazy
yes,
twat
I
who
know,
doesn't
but
run around.
Mbeumo isn't, though, right? Like what I'm just trying to say is there's some intangibles which a player can bring to a club, right? And they don't need you to sit there with tactics board for a million times. There's different types, and I think Burmo, for example, a guy who's old enough, who's already probably done his research, because I don't think that for the last 2 weeks that this deal was sure that low key someone is not passing a flip file worth of information about that they should know. All of that stuff is probably happening low key over there. I don't for a second think that if Burmo doesn't make it on Wednesday, right, or on Tuesday to join the tour, that there'll be something wrong, because unfortunately this is still called preseason, right? These games don't matter, right? In that case, they're to get conditioning, to get your game up. So yes, they missed the training, but remember also the training in a World Cup year would have just been a bunch of lads, right, who don't get picked for the national team. This is what this 2 weeks is generally, and
That's why
then
this is so
preseason.
important right now. This is the best we get.
But we've
Next
had
year,
most, but
pre-season.
we've had most of the squad though available for the preseason so far. So in other years you wouldn't, because the players would have been somewhere else. So there's also still the additional factor that yes, the players are now finally together from a training preseason, but I don't really think that having Burma for the preseason tour is as bad, because that's for me learning on the job for those 4 or 5 games is for me still preseason. You
And
know
there's
what I
also, you both make real like top form from both of you.
mean?
Absolutely, like really brilliant stuff. But yeah, I completely agree with both of your points. There's an element of what Mark's saying is that I agree with, is that if he was brought in right at the start, he would have had all these weeks to train with the first team before heading out on tour. 100% agree with that. There's also an element of that probably would be beneficial that he's not there, because he's not having to deal with this bullshit saga where players are turning up after the final bell, where training by themselves. So he hasn't had to deal with the drama and all that sort of thing. He's also, if he doesn't go on the America tour, he will end up there eventually, admittedly, but then there's a lot less media pressures. There's a lot less people wanting to talk to him because he's just signed for Manchester United. They're already going to get their teeth into Cunha when he lands in America. That's absolutely a given. Him, Bruno, and Mbeumo and Cunha would probably be they'll be leached
Oh man, they'll be the
massive.
front faces of every program, every
Yeah,
digital
yeah,
outlet.
absolutely, and that's completely understandable. Also, there's an element of Manchester United. They want to make shirt sales, and they will. They'll make shirt sales from the Mbeumo and the Cunha deals. Absolutely, like
But there's also the other aspects, Nathan. It's like buying your house. For him, knowing where his nearest mosque is because his culture. Where's he going to? There's those aspects which,
but all that sort of
yes,
stuff would have been
they have
agreed.
money, but some people like the personal touch. They do like that personal touch of coming in doing that early.
Yeah, no, I completely get that, and I completely get that. But there's probably an element of personal agreement. The personals were agreed a long time ago. It was just about Brentford getting their things done.
Yeah, but you
So he
can't
would
just go
have.
and buy a house, can he, and things like that. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, but
That makes a
Manchester
big
United
difference.
would. I'm sure Manchester United have already given him a list of 8 houses to look at, and here's 5 within local areas to your local mosque, etc. You know, I completely get what you're saying. You know, he wants to settle in, he wants to get out there. He's got family and all that sort of thing. He wants to get out there and sort it all out. There's just an element of I completely agree with all the points that are being thrown out. I really do, but there's an element of I think Kai's hit it on the head a few times that we have to be delighted that these players are in, but it is disappointing it's taken this long, and it's disappointing that the dominoes had to fall to get to this point. You know, the panicking aspect I agree with is that the fact that if these dominoes hadn't have fallen, this saga could probably would have been continued to go, and we probably would have lost even more time in the first team. There's an element of his medical will probably now not be until Monday/Tuesday if the deal, I mean, we're still waiting for official confirmation from Brentford that it's been agreed, but all the sources coming out from everywhere are pretty much saying this is done. You know, the third bid is it, and they were either going to accept the Mbeumo deal or accept the
They,
Wissa deal.
they can do the medical in the States. They've done it
Yeah,
before. They do the medicals at like UCLA or somewhere
and
like
this
that, which is better than
and
the English ones.
yeah, and the game tomorrow in Sweden, which we're not even going to talk about because I believe it's pointless. Is it Sweden? It is Sweden.
Yeah,
It's not home.
29-man squad, so that's 245 with totally different 11 players,
Yeah,
which
so
I could pretty much tell you exactly how they're going to line up for that.
yeah, in all honesty, you're not going to see anything from this preseason game tomorrow, or even in America. That's really apart from
Well,
maybe
all I want to
formation.
see 45 minutes hard work running in the right formation and creating chances. But that's what I was just alluding to. They've been working on stuff which looks like cutbacks and things like that in the attacking formation and recovery runs from what United have put out. And that's what I was saying. So it's all those just tiny little things. It's all right knowing what it is. Both Cunha and Mbeumo come from a 3-5-2 background, whether
Mm.
they played a 2 or 3-4-2-1. But they're used to these formations, which is the biggest plus mentality and use of formation. It's just like Kai, I get what you were saying. Like you just need to tweak it, and that you do that in game. But they're only going to have 45 minutes a half, to do that because of the heat. You know, me and Naomi were saying some of these games are going in 100 degrees heat, which is absolutely diabolical to put these sports stars through that just for a couple of million. Um,
Yeah,
like the end of season thing, I didn't know this until recently. The 10 million we got was to pay Adidas. We now pay them 10 million a year until we get back into the Champions League.
yeah. Well, that's the Glazers contract signings for you. That's the agreements that they made with Ed Woodward in charge. You know, we all hailed that agreement, but that's because we all assumed we were going to be in the Champions League football every year. But I think we will end there. Really top form from both of you tonight, and I think for the first time in a long time, Mark, I've disagreed with a few of your points, and it's quite nice that we've had an opportunity to have it out. So
Yeah, no, it's good. I always going to see it from the coaches' side of things. So I know exactly what the manager wants and what the coaches want for his players. Kai was looking at the business aspect, and I totally agree with you, Kai, because when we done the one about ticket prices, you've got to work those finances out. But we've got to find a way as Manchester United to become like that again. At the moment, it's one side's business, one side's the coach, and they're not going to link up, which means one of them's going to have to give. We need David Gill and Ferguson back, where it just
yeah,
works seamlessly like that.
I think that ship has long sailed. Kai, absolutely top form tonight, mate. Really appreciate your time. And Mark, as usual, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you, everyone, for watching tonight. We've had some really good viewing figures, and we really do appreciate it. If you go over and follow us on TikTok and Twitter, I will be uploading TikTok soon. And I think there'll be a bit of content from this show in particular that we'll chuck out on there. That's for sure.
You gotta put the music. You gotta make it seem like Mark and I are actually fighting. Like
Yeah,
you gotta be like,
I'm gonna edit it. It's gonna be like Street Fighter.
cut
It's gonna be like
scenes.
Mortal
You
Kombat.
gotta do the whole thing.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Thank you, everyone in the comments. Naomi, as usual. Mark Hannah, good to see you. And Glenn, thank you so much for your questions and comments as well. Yeah, keep an eye out on our socials. We will be back very soon. Potentially no show over the weekend because a lot of sport going on this weekend. We've got a lot of boxing. We've got a lot of golf. the Lions tour down under, all that sort of stuff. There's a good chance we will not be back now until early next week, where hopefully we are talking medicals done and deal complete. But until then,
Nathan, why does it sound like you're talking to all the wives in the world? This sounded like a wife announcement.
Alone, I'm watching the TV.
Yeah. We are just, it's a public service announcement to every person out there that your husband or partner, it is a good chance you will not speak to them over the weekend. Cheers, Glenn. Thank you very much indeed. Until then, guys, thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
Take care.